Denmark in the Second World War. They were invaded in 1940. Okay? And let me just share you an example of informal social ethics, societal ethics, in Denmark during the Second World War. By contrast, the Danish people gave us an example of bureaucratic moral responsibility. After the German invasion of April 9, 1940, Denmark became a model protectorate. Its government intact and watched over by a minister plenipotentiary from the German Foreign Office. So when they were taken over, the Germans didn't have to invest a lot of men and material there to oversee Denmark. From the outset, Berlin pressured the Danish government to disenfranchise the country's Jewish citizens and to deport them to the concentration camps with the stateless Jews then living in Denmark. To the Germans' considerable surprise because no one else was doing this, to the Germans' considerable surprise, the orders were met with immediate and complete refusal from every segment of Danish society. Politicians and ministers, business and labor leaders, teachers and ordinary citizens. Does everyone see how that's an informal social ethic? Okay? Listen, we know what's going on here, and we're not going to be complicit. We're not going to turn on our fellow citizens, even if it means harm to ourselves. Was there a law in Denmark that said, Danish citizens, this is how you should behave? Did King Olaf have to issue a pronouncement saying, Danish citizens, this is how you should behave? No. They just knew. This is what it meant to be a Dane. And they actually took quite proactive efforts to hide Jews from the Nazis. And it's one of the few examples where they actually restored property to the Jews who had left and fled. Informal societal ethic. I like to think that, some of the examples that you gave before, we have those strains, those of ideas that bind us together as a people.
Well, we have freedom of speech, but then there are limits to freedom of speech.
Sure.
You can get into trouble for saying something.
Absolutely. Yeah, and that's a principle that we have, freedom of speech. That in some cases we have principles that kind of conflict with one another. I'm thinking back to, remember a few years back, there was quite a lot of controversy when it may have been a Danish newspaper, as a matter of fact, published a picture of the Prophet Muhammad. You remember that? And it caused great conflict. It brought the Pope into the debate. All sorts of. I think we actually had some missionaries perish in Muslim countries because of a conflict of principles. Here in Western society, freedom of speech is a time-honored value, right? We want free speech. Whereas the contrasting principle in many Muslim countries is that you never show an iconic picture of the Prophet Muhammad. He doesn't appear in picture. That's a principle. And there you had conflicting principles. So you can see there, that's a great example of how different societies may value different things. That's a really good example. I'm glad you brought that up.
I thought it actually had been a cartoon.
Oh, sure.
Because if my freedom of speech create a riot, I might get arrested for inciting a riot.
Sure.
So it has limits.
Right. It is an absolute. And I heard something. Yes, sir.
I thought part of the conflict with the picture was that it was cartoonish and insulting, not just that it was a picture of Muhammad.
I think, yeah, well, it was, right? But even that being the case, the fact that a picture had been depicted. I mean, if you look back at the pictures of Muhammad, you got to go back hundreds and hundreds of years. You generally just don't see it. It's not like if you've got statues of the saints or depictions of Christian figures, where that's widely accepted and in some cases revered. It's the opposite principle. But you're right, yeah, if I remember correctly, it didn't have a profit with a bomb of some kind. It was a few years back. But yeah, it's different societal ethics clashing in real time there. Okay. The social ethics. Let me just talk about this next level of ethics, and then we'll take our first break. So what we're doing is we're moving from large social organizations to smaller ones. And ultimately, we're going to get down to individuals and their ideas about morality. The next level is professional. Professional ethics. You tell me, in your organization, are there certain professions? Do you have engineers? Sure. Okay. You have a group that have engineering background and training, and certifications and licensures, right? So you've got that group, and sometimes what you're going to find with professions in an organization, they have their own way of talking to one another. They have their own way of communicating and socializing and things like that as well. That's not unusual at all. Any other professions that you have within? Do you have scientists? Sure. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, law enforcement, absolutely. That's another.
Information technology?
Yeah, sure. You have the IT folks, right? You've got all these different professions. You may have HR professionals. Yeah, business folks, right? Handle business operations, the organization. Financial, yeah, then you got customer service. Folks who do a lot of customer service work. Okay, all over. Regulatory folks, scientists. My goodness. Steve, didn't you tell me there was 22, 23 different divisions within the organization? That's incredible. And each of these professions may have their own ideas about professional norms and responsibilities. Okay? Sometimes a profession will, in fact, codify these ideas in a code of ethics. Is anyone familiar with the code of ethics for those professions that you just identified? What profession? Engineering? Okay, yeah. And yeah, the engineers have, you have attorneys, I'm sure, right? Absolutely. Yes, absolutely. So just about every profession has a code of ethics, and I'm sure you know that code of ethics is on the wall. It's not uncommon. I look for these things when I visit. Someone will have a code of ethics maybe on the wall in the break room, or maybe when they went through training, the initial training when they came into the organization, they got a copy of the code of ethics. In some law enforcement training programs, they have to memorize the code of ethics for law enforcement, and they all get up there and swear by the code of ethics. Okay, so professions may have ideas about right and wrong. Okay? In the materials that I handed out to you there, I've got an example of a code of ethics on the second page. And this one applies to all of you. This is the code of ethics for the American Society of Public Administration. And I do have some extra copies here. Just give me that. If anyone could read this, my eye doctor told me, when you get early 40s, this is what happens. The Code of Ethics, this is the one that's been developed and refined for many years by the American Society for Public Administration. You folks are all public administrators, and here is your code. And in some ways, this is really hard to digest because there are so many tenets in this Code of Ethics. There are a lot of requirements here. I'm not sure we could all live up to all these requirements. If you would, turn your eyes to Roman numeral number 3, demonstrate personal integrity. Item number 3. So 3.3. This is a tenet for our for American